liberty, and justice for all. Okay. Before we begin, I'd like to remind any members of the public that your comments are welcome. It's your community, our community. We have two places in the agenda for those comments, public participation. And if you would like to speak, please use the chat function, identify your name, address, and Wendy will bring it before the board. So with that, our first item of business is going to be a recognition, very special recognition for Daniel Hand Sr., Scott Testore. And do we have Scott on hand?
So, Chairman Cowley, we had planned to had Scott. We had sent him a letter, but he's unable to join us with his family tonight. He will be watching. They told us that they'll watch the tape, and so we did share with them that we recognized, because it just happened just prior to last board meeting, that we spoke about at last board meeting. But just want to say again how proud the district is of Scott Testore being named National Soccer Player of the Year. We signed his letter of intent to play at UConn. I guess that was a goal all along, which is great to hear. I never had a chance to see him play at hand, but I've gone to many UConn games over the years, so hopefully I'll get a chance to see him play there and on TV and live. And so that's just phenomenal for Hand and Madison and the state of Connecticut. And so we wish Scott and his family the best.
Yeah, I'd like to second that. That's just tremendous. And I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
I'm a new UConn soccer fan because of Scott.
Same. Yeah. And while I have the board's attention, I want to let you know that we do have our principals and administration on tonight. They are, I guess, not panelists, but they are available, and we'll make sure we can get them on if there's questions that during the budget process that we need their assistance with.
Okay. Well, at this point, are there any members of the public who'd like to ask a question or make a statement? We'll give it a minute maybe for anybody to turn up.
Looks like we have no one.
All right. Well, there'll be another opportunity later, but let's move right along to our student representative report. We have Isabel and Eric, and I'll let you flip a coin and see who wants to go first.
I don't know where Isabel is right now. I thought she was coming, but it looks like she'll pop in. I'll just start. So the first thing is January 19th. We're running up close to when sports will be opened up again. Everyone's very excited about that, being able to start our seasons for the winter season. And they're going to announce on the 14th that, like, if that is the exact day, they're going to review and make sure that's still a good day to start. Also, the fall play, they're in the middle of editing the video of it, so they're getting ready to send that out to everyone so we can watch the fall play. And they're going to send out a link so we can all see it. The chorus concert was sadly postponed earlier, and they're going to be rescheduling it to sometime this January. And they're going to also be recording it and doing all the COVID precautions that are necessary for singing. And similarly, they're finding something that they can do for vibe of some performance that they can record, because usually right now they would all be going across the country and competing, which they sadly are not able to do, but they're still going to be able to perform for us, and we can still see their hard work. Also, something kind of nice that will come from it, that they're able to now perform not just on the stage, but throughout the cafeteria. They have a lot more space that they can work with since there's no audience in the area. So that's going to be interesting how they utilize that space. Also, Wellness Wednesday, we have been told that we're going to get a new presenter coming in to talk about perseverance and resilience in the upcoming Wellness Wednesdays. And the first few are going to be targeted towards more of the seniors and the juniors, and kind of how to persevere in these kind of stranger times with online school. they're also possibly thinking about when we have those presenters, it won't be every time, but stretching those a little bit longer, maybe possibly to an hour every occasionally instead of the traditional half hour, so we get a lot from it. Also, the 2021-22 school year schedules are going to be passed around next Monday with the new shortened, you could say, book, an easier to use online version of the class book. I sadly won't be able to get to use that because it seems like it would be much easier than what I've had to do in the past. But I know Isabel and a lot of people are looking forward to it. That is all we had for this meeting.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Any comments or questions for Eric? Discussions? Well, I'll start off with one, Eric. So how's the the home stretch of your senior year going?
It's going pretty good. I'm pulling through. It's been really neat. I've gotten to work on an independent project, which has really been interesting now. And I've also, I think I forgot to mention that, you all know this, but in that new booklet, I believe the incoming freshmen are going to be starting to be required to do an independent project. And now that I'm doing one, I'm seeing that that's really a good thing to do.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you. All right. Thank you. All right, Superintendent Cook, the floor is yours. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I had just one thing.
Yeah.
So I know in years past, we always generally pull in a junior, or they start their sort of interview process now. No, a sophomore, right, for the junior role as board liaison. And maybe, Eric, you could just talk a little bit about that process. I think since people watch this meeting, instead of coming to it, maybe you'll reach more families and they might, some kids, they might tell their kids, or some other people might be interested. If you could just talk about how you became a board liaison.
Yeah, so it's as simple as kind of writing about yourself on a sheet of paper, which is good prep for what I'm having to do this year as a senior for colleges and schools. But you kind of start off with an application, you apply, it gets read over by the board, and that's how the decision is made. But once you're in this role, it kind of becomes more of people can look to you, especially during these times, to get maybe smaller things or bigger things that aren't usually able to be brought to the board so easily. We're kind of like a pathway for them. So when we were having all these troubles, like with me in the beginning with all the technology, people would be telling us, oh, this is going wrong. And we'd bring it up to you guys, you'd give us a solution, and it really made things go a lot easier. So probably without it, there'd be a lot more things that we're struggling through that we probably have solved a lot of those now. It's really been one of the good benefits of being a liaison.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Any further questions? All right, Dr. Cook, it's all yours.
Thank you. So yesterday was great to return to in-person learning. We had watched numbers and situations in town and in our area very closely over break, and we're convinced that we were able to return to in-person learning very, very safely. We will continue to watch if there's any potential post-holiday spike in numbers or any greater concerns. We talk at least 3 times a week throughout the town with the health department and others giving us that information. So it's very important. And I'm also on calls with superintendents at least twice a week as well to see what's going on in other districts. So it's very helpful, but we're happy to be back. We are up to about 18% across the district of students that have opted out. So students have certainly taken advantage of that opportunity if they felt that was best for them and were concerned about safety or whatever the reason may be. I believe I shared this with the board already. I'm just very impressed with how quickly the district had made that shift. Many districts have put in a time frame where students had to notify ahead of time, but here in Madison, that basically happens right away. And so, I know that's some extra effort on behalf of our students and staff. So I'm really pleased that that's in place, and I think it's very family-friendly policy and how that was handled. So excited about that. Also, we are beginning planning phases with staff and with the town of Madison in terms of vaccinations for staff. We are 1B, and so we're expecting that sometime later in January. It's been pushed off a little bit. If you've been following the news, I think the vaccines getting to the states has been a little slower than they had expected, and then down to the towns. So we are working on a plan. I've seen vaccinations happening next door in the town gymnasium, and so it is a very efficient process. But obviously, we're a bigger player in this, and we're working with Guilford and North Branford in terms of people that be vaccinated in Madison. So we're watching very closely. I'll keep the board and public updated on that. But we know our staff are very interested in obtaining the vaccine through us, and ready to do that. So we're working on some plans on that as we speak. In terms of something we're able to do a little earlier this year, thanks to some state changes, we I'm skipping the calendar, but I'll go back to the calendar. But in terms of the commencement date for graduation, I know Eric would be interested in this. This year, we're able to do that a little earlier than previously. And so in speaking with Principal Salvatore, we were looking to set the date as Friday, June 11th. Principal Salvatore said it is well received when that is attached to a weekend, as families are traveling and want to celebrate. We're hoping, based on what I had just shared previously, that this will maybe look a little different than last year. We don't know that we'll be back to a wide scale event by June, but we are hoping and we'll adjust as we can when we get to that point and we see where things are. But we were looking and wanted to share that with the public as soon as possible for June 11th, because we know families travel and make plans and want to be ready for that. So I skipped on the school calendar. We have shared with the board and the public the proposed 2020-21, 2022 school calendar. It is pretty much the standard calendar for Madison. First day for teachers would be August 24th. The first day for students would be August 30th. There would be the traditional breaks in the fall and holidays, a 2-day break in February, a 1.5-day break in March, a week off in April that we followed the LEARN districts on that. And so that would provide staff with and our students with the same breaks as those around them. And then the last day in the calendar would be June 13th. It would be a Monday. However, as the board knows, that's very infrequent that we ever land on the last day that we propose, as we have done recently, and seemed to be something that our public was interested in. Was held a traditional snow day on the first snow day, and I think we would continue with that. So it'd be unlikely that we'd end on that Monday. If we had a year without snow, we would, and then we would potentially present the board with some alternatives to having 1 day of school on the 13th, as we have more than 180 days here for students in Madison. It's up for a vote later on the agenda. I'll pause here in case there's any questions, and then I can move on if there are none.
I have a question here. Go ahead, Emily.
Thanks, Happy. A quick one about the vaccine. I'm just curious if you've heard from faculty and staff the sort of response in terms of percentages, and to clarify if you are or are not requiring it, recommending it. If you could talk a little bit about those things, please.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. The survey closed yesterday, so we got the results first thing this morning. 83% of our faculty and staff have indicated they were a yes. Now, this was a anonymous, non-binding survey, as you can imagine, and 13% indicated they were I don't know at this point, which again I appreciate as well. And then there were some no's there, obviously, as well. At this point, we were not looking at it being required. That could come in the future, but at this point, it's not required for educators. that may be as much related to supply chain as anything else that could be coming. I know that the state is getting some legal advice on that for schools.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have a quick follow-up to the vaccine question. The survey that you sent out, what was the participation rate of that?
It was very high. I'm going to pull that up.
I stumped the superintendent.
You're making me do math in my head.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, we could take like a betting pool here, you know, average wisdom of crowds.
So we did it over break. We had 424 responses. So I believe that represents about 80-85% of staff that participated.
Excellent. Great. Happy, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question about the calendar, and I actually was going to ask Greg. I would like to propose some changes to it, but I don't know if this is the right time to do it or when we go to the vote.
Well, why don't we air the issues? Well, Greg, what do you have to say?
It doesn't matter.
You're on the right track. Go ahead.
Okay, so I would like to propose looking at moving April break to that week of March, where you have the March day. When I was on the board previously, 2018, we had looked into this sort of extensively, and I had looked back 4 years. There were a few reasons for it. Essentially, March is our longest month, right? So we all know how painful, long and cold it is. It doesn't actually ever go out like a lamb. It stays kind of like a really bad lion. About 95% of the snow days for the 4 years leading up to 2018 were in March. And then we talked to another board member and I talked to a lot of parents about having a March break. The problem with an April break is the spring sports have started. And if you have a child in high school, you can't really do anything because they have practices over the break that the kids are required to attend or required to attend. I mean, it's not mandatory, but it's expected. So what I would like to propose is moving that week in April to that week in March, and then taking the March day and making a long weekend around Easter, so Good Friday and Easter Monday. That seems like an extensive change for a vote that's happening later. So I don't know if maybe it should just go back to committee one more time and then come back to the board, or we can have a discussion about it, whatever. But I think that would be something that would be appealing to a lot of families in Madison. I would say that overwhelmingly people were on board, especially people who had children in high school were really in favor of that.
I just respectfully disagree. And my reasoning behind that is that I think, when we've switched vacations in the past, we have a lot of families in town who work in other districts. I think generally speaking, most public schools in the state of Connecticut, and I could be wrong about this, but to the best of my knowledge, have an April break and not a March break. And so, I mean, again, I don't know procedurally how this works, but I think, I'd like to know how the administration feels about it as well, I guess. It would be a major change.
Can I just make two procedural notes? One is the committee, the policy committee, moved it forward to the board for this purpose of full board discussion, deliberation, changes, recommendations, whatever. So it's at that stage. So typically we don't send it back to the committee, although there's no rule against that either. But that's just a note that that discussion is welcome at this point from my perspective in terms of parliamentary procedure. The other thing is the committee did discuss this possibility, but did not make that recommendation at that time. Again, that's just a note.
Right. Greg, just going back to your committee, you guys did create a long weekend in March though, correct? Did I see that in there again this year?
Yeah, both in 2021, so upcoming, and then again in this 2022 spring calendar, there is the day and a half that Dr. Cook mentioned.
Okay, thank you.
Diane?
I have two questions. The first is there a hard deadline for the vote on this calendar, like by policy or whatever. And the second is, one of the things that we voted on when I first joined the board and we had a vote on the calendar year, one of the things that was brought up was that during certain breaks, a lot of the local community centers would have like a childcare week or something like that, where for parents who work, the kids, even though they had no school, they would have like a week of like camp or something. And so one of the questions that I had at the time, and that was why we voted to move it to a different week, was have we ever considered actually doing a survey, of the community at this particular time to find out what really works best for the majority of Madison residents? It's easy to say that, all the families are going to use those particular camps, but we don't really know who is using it and who isn't. We don't really know. I mean, I don't know what the majority of people in Madison would really want. And if there is time, if there's not a hard set deadline, that we could do a quick survey of parents to find out what works best. Maybe the sports is not going to be, an issue, or maybe it's more of an issue. I think it changes from year to year for the families.
Just
You read my mind, Diane. I was thinking the same thing. That was us newbies, we think alike. But yeah, I was thinking the same thing. A survey for families would be a great idea.
Sorry, just wanted to note there's no policy mandate about the calendar timing, but I would imagine the administration and some planners will have some thoughts about that.
Yeah, I'd like to, Dr. Cook, I'd like to get your opinion from the administration side, and then also as to the time sensitivity of when you'd like to have the schedule finalized.
Thank you. So the policy is that it must be approved no later than the first board meeting in April. So we are ahead of that. However, I would say in experience-wise, this typically you want to have it approved by January, I think, for families to plan. That's just been my experience. We do get calls to the office frequently because I inquired about that. Families wanting to know when the calendar will be published. To my knowledge, public schools, I don't know of any that are due in March. Everybody has done April, and they typically have tried to do it during the through their rest, similar to their rest. So, learn in this area. There's been a lot of discussion that I was a part of prior to joining the district of the superintendents there when they were going to do the calendar, and the vast majority of them landed on the same week as us in April. I spoke to at the policy, at the policy committee meeting that oftentimes if you have a week that is dissimilar from area districts where you have a lot of staff working that presents some issues, that's not our primary concern. Our primary concern is setting a calendar that works best for Madison. But that is a concern that does come up, that you will have, faculty members where their young children might be home one week and then they're having to work or they're home, the next week rather than being matched up. And so, I know staff are concerned with that. I did share, as is practice, the calendar with the MEA leadership, and they were supportive of the calendar presented, to them as a draft. And again, they knew it was a draft, but they were supportive of an April break. They had actually inquired about the March because I think they were aware in the past the boards had that discussion. I think I answered all the questions, but I can share any other information you might like.
I just have a comment. I love the contact information on the back. I think that's a great addition for families. And as somebody who posts the calendar at her desk at work, it's going to be really helpful for. So I think it's a great addition.
Yeah, going back, I guess, a little traditional, but we would plan to pass out paper copies of the calendar. I guess that hasn't happened. And I try and resist paper as much as possible, but I think that's the one thing that still goes on the fridge or, somewhere. And, remind families of half days or, kind of differences in the calendar that they might not be expecting.
What would be involved in pulling together a survey for parents?
I think a survey would be relatively easy to pull together. We certainly have the technology capability to, probably get something out by the end of the week, honestly. Yeah, it'd be, just a matter of what we were looking to ask for questions. And I would propose it if the board, wanted us to go in that direction, we'd want to also do that for staff. I think, again, it would be separate information. You receive it separately, but I think you'd also want to hear from your staff what they would prefer as well.
Could I also add in that we bring it back to policy for discussion after the survey results and then move it forward from there?
If we did that, Violet, I don't have the calendar in front of me. Would we have enough time before the next board meeting of on the 19th to make a decision?
That's the night of the next policy committee meeting. So it would be before the board meeting. And then, so if we were able to pull off a survey in like the next 3 or 4 days and, leave it up shortly, take it down, tabulate all the answers and get it back to us by that meeting again, yes, we would be able to do that. It just depends on how quickly we can pull that together.
I mean, the general questions are, do we have enough information to make a decision? What's the cost of waiting? Has everybody got a fair hearing? And do we feel like we have enough? Have we heard enough to make a decision, whether it's tonight or the 19th? Those are kind of general questions.
I think having the data supports an opinion, and I think that there's value in participation in the calendar by all stakeholders. So I think that's a good suggestion, and it will support whether it's April or March, and then we can kind of solidify that without wondering if we're doing the right thing or what the majority of people would prefer.
I totally agree. I love getting as much input as possible from our community and our staff. So as long as it's not burdening the administration in a time of COVID and budget, that's important to me as well. The other thing, in terms of going back to policy, I guess I'm curious, Violet, why we can't decide this as a full board.
Examine the data. That's all we would do. Examine the data and take a look, and then, I mean, it's going to go to the board anyway, but
that's why I'm just wondering if we could just cut out the middleman, but it's up to you. I don't have a major complaint about it. I was just curious.
Well, we're meeting that day. We're meeting the 19th. So I think kind of just disaggregating a lot of the information and kind of going over anything, whether there are additional comments or anomalies in the data, we can kind of just go through that. But I really do think that it will give us a majority in one date or another, and that will help us decide, and we can just discuss it as a committee. Either way, it's going to move forward and have further discussion. But I think the fact that we also have different makeup that we're proposing for the policy committee, so I think it would help us as well.
I would really like to see a survey, if it's not going to be too much of an issue to get it together. I think that the value of the survey will only be if we get a high percentage of participation, though. Yeah. So I think then that would involve our communications committee, and so to really get it out there and get people involved.
Right. I mean, the survey will be. Sorry, Craig. Go ahead.
Please. No. Galen, you're first.
I would just say that the survey will be really useful information. It won't be dispositive, right? If you have 10 people who vote, 9 of them say February, we're not going to go February, let alone April or March. But it's going to be one factor.
Yeah, along those lines, Galen, do we agree or have consensus at least about what the survey would ask?
Well, we're all thinking on the spot, right? I would like to go back to Superintendent Cook and just first, before we take this further, is this doable, and does it present? Is it too much work, or is it doable?
I think it's doable by the, we would have to close it, I would say by the 18th to meet the piece of the, enough responses. That may be hard depending on what you feel is, many responses, but I do think it'll be definitive. I think we'll give you some information. I'm glad Greg asked that question because I was going to make sure I clarified before we moved on. My thought is that it's just a question with two selections. Some lead in, that the board is working on developing its calendar for the 2021-2022 school year. They would like your input, and they are considering the full week break to either be the week of March 14th or April 11th, or alternatively, I could just say a week off in March or a week off in April. But if it seemed to be that those were the 2 weeks we were narrowing it down to, and those would have still the least impact in terms of extending the school year, because we already have, that day and a half identified for March, and you already have a Good Friday off in April. And if we do stay with April, I really would encourage you want to stay that same week with the Learn group. And I think that just makes sense. So those would be the 2 weeks, in my opinion, that you'd want to select. But if you want me to keep it a little bit more open, I can do that as well.
I personally favor a specific date. Just say.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I would also include with March with a long weekend around in April, because I think that was the important part of it. So it's essentially the same number of days off, but you get that 4-day weekend around Easter in April.
Okay, so the whatever month is selected, the other month would still have that day and a half off. Yep.
Yeah, because
okay.
it's the same amount of days. Mhm.
Gotcha.
Is that still possible in terms of moving the what is currently on March 17, 2022, the professional development day? Could that day be moved to April easily enough, the PD itself?
You could do it after Easter, that Monday, in exchange for that third Friday.
The reason I raise it, Violet, is because that is what creates the half day, so you'd almost need an artificial half day to make it an even question, like Happy's describing, which I agree is the way to approach it, if that is possible. I'm just checking on the logistics of that.
Okay.
So you would have a half day before the Good Friday holiday. I think we would be doing internal PD because there wouldn't be any districts to work with.
Right. Okay. Well, this wouldn't be a vote right now, but procedurally, if we were to pull this from tonight's agenda, Greg, what would we?
I'll make a motion to table the vote on the calendar for tonight. That is my motion. Anybody second?
Second. Diane.
So now you can discuss further, Galen, and take a vote on whether we agree to table.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I would just like to point out there's a couple of spelling errors that really kind of annoy me. Sorry. There's a couple of errors with professional development. They have PROV instead of PROF. And then Memorial Day has an apostrophe S. I don't know why.
Okay. Duly noted. All right. Any further discussion? All right. Greg is my parliamentarian. Are we going to call a vote on this? All right. So the motion is all in favor of tabling the vote on the 21-22 school calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any nay votes? All opposed? Okay, motion carries. So we will strike that from the agenda. That's item number 9, I guess, action item 9. Okay, you never know where this stuff is going. All right. We are still, Dr. Cook, I guess, within the superintendent's report with some other good news.
Yes, thank you. So the Facilities Committee received a report from Bill McMinn just an hour ago about a very small grant opportunity, but an exciting one to provide the district and town as a whole 5 water filling stations, 3 for the schools, 2 for town sites that students would utilize. And it just came to us. The turnaround time is very tight. I believe they have to have it in early next week, and so it doesn't require any board vote. And I'll share some of the good news for Tom to share during his committee report. But we just wanted to make sure we got that in front of you as an opportunity. It is something that if we don't get the grant, there's no matching funds. It's not anything that holds us up or there's any cost to. Move on to 4.4 in our budget discussion. And so I know this comes a little later in terms of the presentation from the administration than usual, but I do thank the board and the administration for waiting for me to be here to be part of this work. Certainly prior to my arrival, a lot of the work did occur, and they kept me updated on that progress, and was able to have some input as well. And just excited about the opportunity here to present the budget to the board. As I shared in my letter to the board, the budget is such an important piece of what's going to happen next year. We really determine our major goals and objectives for next year in that work. And I have my central office team, and as I mentioned, the principals are here as well, and administration from the schools are here to support as need be. But I know Stacy has got a PowerPoint that she'd like to share. Thank you. Thank you, Stacy. And so if you can go to the next slide. Thank you. In terms of framing the discussion tonight, I'm just going to share a few comments continued about the budget process. As I mentioned, it does start much earlier, in the schools. It really never ends. We had our approval in May, and typically continue on and start thinking about that next budget year. So I know that the staff have been working very hard on that, and the principals, and start to think about what their requests will be and what they're looking for. And a lot of hard decisions were made prior to my arrival, and so very cognizant of that, and thankful for the staff. And there's also some incredibly great success stories in terms of savings that have occurred, specifically in health insurance, and in terms of transportation costs as well. And better news that we feel will be coming shortly on that. But in terms of health insurance, due to some changes, and we'll get into exact numbers in the future, and employee contracts and just wellness and negotiations, they've done a great job of just saving a tremendous amount of money on that. That's a line item that could be a 10% in the positive, and we'd be having a much different discussion tonight. And so, as I mentioned, a lot of hard discussions. We'll have each department highlight where the cost drivers are from their area, and any new asks that we're looking at. Next slide. Thank you. So we debated whether to put this just at the end or in the beginning, but we know that the board is that type that would want to open their presents early, and so we got right down to the dollar, and we'll work back from there to show you how we got to that number. But the total cost would be 1.94%, and as you can imagine, all numbers here have been created and developed in October and November, and presented to you for the first time in December. And so we are predicting where we will be spending money and landing in June of 2022. And so that's oftentimes difficult, but in times we are now, it's even harder. We are taking the tact as the administration that come opening school year in August of 2021, that we will be in a position with COVID-19 that the cost will not be significantly beyond what we currently have spent. We've bought a lot of materials that would continue. There are some consumables that we would have to repurchase, and depending on where we are on that, but we did not feel that we needed to put any large additional spending into that we would just repurpose as we have for the most part this year, and hopefully continue to receive some reimbursement on that. So, we are, as I said, taking an optimistic view in that area, although we know that there'll still be impact on our daily lives come that time frame. And I'll turn this over to Stacy to take it from here, and I'll be back later.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. I'm just going to kind of walk you through the same process, Finance Committee members, that we kind of did a couple weeks ago. Those of you who were around last year, it's a similar process. I'm going to hand it over to the administrative team to kind of respond and answer questions as we go along. So does anybody have any questions on this slide? It's pretty familiar. We break it out by department: general ed, special ed, facilities. The health insurance is a big item, as well as the decline in debt service. So this is pretty consistent over the last many years. So does anybody have any questions on this slide? Okay, and this was in your book, your document that you received. So the first item that we want to go over is our personnel and benefits. This is the biggest part of our budget. There have been many questions through the Finance Committee discussions. So we did bullet certain areas that we thought would be of interest to you. So you can see, hopefully these answer a lot of the questions that you have, and I'm going to actually turn it over to Heather. So she'll be able to walk you through this in the next couple of slides. And she's going to tag team with Gail and Art, because there are a couple of positions that are included in our requested or recommended budget from the admin team. So Heather, you're up.
I'm here. Good evening, everybody. How are you? So I get to start off because one of the largest drivers in our budget is salaries, because we're a people organization. So the main driver always every year when talking about the budget is the required contractual increases, which were determined through the contract negotiation process. And depending on the union, the contractual increases range from 1.75% to 2.89%. As you've been seeing over many years now, as our enrollment is declining, the district has been responding to the decline in enrollment with some reductions in staffing associated with the reduction of number of students. Specifically, we are anticipating the greatest number of student reductions to be at the high school level. The 2.5 FTE related to the enrollment decline would be at the high school level. In addition, there would be a reduction in 0.7 FTE associated with curriculum. I'm sure Gail can speak to this in greater detail, but due to the COVID environment this year and anticipations for kind of post-COVID recuperation, the curriculum would be paused for next school year. In terms of staffing, the board should be aware when Dr. Patty Foote was here as interim superintendent, 2 security specialist positions were added in the district, specifically at the Jeffrey School and at the Brown Ryerson campus. That was done really to respond to some COVID-related issues. But we found with the addition of those security specialists, there's been just general enhancement to overall security for the district, and the program's working very well, and we'd like to continue that staffing model. Also related to COVID, there was a major change in how we were handling substitute staffing. We used to have daily subs come in, but with the COVID environment and the need to maintain cohorts of staffing, we opted this year to utilize building-based subs. We would like to continue that program next year for a number of reasons. One is I think there's a great benefit of having daily consistent subs that are in the schools, know the staff, and know the students. Additionally, because we've lost our basically larger sub pool, we think it would be very difficult to regain that number of daily subs for the start of next school year. So the continuation of that program's in the budget. Beyond that, the other areas associated with personnel is benefits. And the largest driver associated with that are associated payroll taxes related to the increase in adjustments in salary, along with some additional costs in the areas of pension and workers' comp. Stacey, I didn't know if you wanted to move to the next. So that was a general overview. This slide shows the actual dollars associated with those various topics. So contractually, we're looking at $591,000 increase in salaries. For the 3.2 overall staffing reduction, again, 2.5 for enrollment declines, 0.7 for curriculum. That's a reduction of about $200,000. The continuation of the security in the range of $66,000, and for building-based subs, about $49,000. The various areas for benefits, increases in life insurance, Social Security, Medicare, and pension came to the area of $53,000. There were 2 budget assumptions for 2 new positions, a math intervention and a technology support position. And I'll defer to Art and Gail respectively if they want to speak to those positions.
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Heather, and thank you to the board for their time this evening. I wanted to open up this position with some highlights from a national discussion that's starting to build about the impact of the past 2 years on student learning. And in particular, there's a large discussion building about the projected impact on content in mathematics in particular. They really point to, and this is from Education Week, which just came out this month, looking at the impact of teaching math remotely versus other content area, the sequencing associated with math, and the difficulty that presents in teaching math remotely in a one-dimensional kind of setting. They also point to a lot of known math anxiety, which is basically 1 in 5 students have some sort of math anxiety. They feel that the conditions that are present right now will only exacerbate those students who have some math anxiety and present some further challenges for them. They also took a look at other disasters and math learning loss, and there's some recap there for you as well. So I just wanted to highlight that national discussion. You might recall that we have a full-time English language interventionist. So that person helps at the high school level to provide intervention for our students who might be struggling with reading and writing. We do not have a math interventionist at the high school level. We do have one at K-8. So this proposal would add the ability for us to have math intervention for students who might be struggling in mathematics. In the past couple of years, we have developed a math learning lab as well as an ELA learning lab, which is staffed by our own teachers. And it's for students who drop in during their study time to access additional supports. But that is a totally elected support. Students need to be highly motivated to come in and to drop by and to receive some extra help. It is not the same setup as is available for our students for reading support with an interventionist. So it's a nice add-on, and it certainly will continue to be. The impact of the hybrid model means that our students who accessed it every day last year might be only accessing it a few days a week. And again, intervention means a scheduled time and not just a voluntary self-motivated time. I am prepared to talk a little bit more about intervention at our next curriculum meeting. So I'm hoping that I can offer some additional details of the difference between an intervention model versus a learning lab. I'm gonna pass this on to Art. I believe he has the next position.
Gail, can I ask you one question about that?
Mhm.
Art, for the learning lab, is there any kind of virtual learning lab that the kids can drop into or reach out to their teacher, the teachers who staff it, to get that help when they're not in school?
There's not a virtual learning lab right now. It's pretty thinly staffed because it's only available because we have assigned study centers. So right now, with trying to provide coverage to all of our classrooms, it's pretty lean in these conditions. Definitely the other piece of it is we do have a few students who might be accessing learning lab more frequently than their cohort. But that again is self-motivated and self-assigned. Any other questions?
Okay, I think Art, you're up.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I want to give you some supporting information for the request I've made for an additional position for technology support. Right now, we have 3 building-based people, 2 12-month positions that are full-time employees, and 1 position that is a school year, only 10-month, 6-hour-a-day employee. And they're covering 5 buildings and plus the TCLC. And they primarily do desktop break fix support, peripheral devices, some Windows support, things like that. Chromebook support is huge. They do break fix repairs on many of the common problems with Chromebooks, both hardware and in operating system reloads and things like that. And I wanted to, identify that hopefully the need is clear as we, at the end of the year, we're the beneficiary of some extra dollars that you were gracious enough to allocate to us completing our one-to-one device program with 1,000 devices added to the network at the end of last year. So we've added about 1,000 devices, all of which are Chromebooks, and basically expanded the one-to-one program to its completion. So we had about 1,500 devices in kids' hands for the 1,500 Chromebooks that we had, and now we have approximately 2,500, which is consistent with the student population one-to-one. The complexity of the classroom configuration has absolutely increased also. There's a lot more small peripheral devices that are configured and often need adjustments and work and that sort of thing. So, that's the kind of work that the person in this position would do. And our work ticket system supports the growth in the number of work tickets that we've seen. I'm saying over 2 years, we looked at August 20th, the period of time from August 20th to December 15th this year, last year, and the year before. And, last year we had a surprisingly large bump, but if you think about it, we closed Island Avenue School. And at the same time that redistributed the 4th grade from 3 buildings to 1 building, and it took the 6th grade and moved it from Brown to Polson. And as you know, that required a whole lot of movement in the district. Many teachers and many students all moved around. So we had a huge increase in our work tickets from last year, from the year before to last year. And in addition to that, we still went up about another 11%. So we're around 31 to 32% increase over that 2-year period in just the work tickets. And, I think that hopefully these statistics speak for themselves. But I'm certainly here to answer any questions you might have about this request.
Art, I had a question for you. Are you looking for a 10-month or a 12-month position? And also, part 2, these tech supports personnel are also maintaining all the teachers' administrative equipment as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's where I was talking really about the complexity of the classroom configurations too. So yes, definitely all of the equipment, and basically they do a lot of work, and I don't want to say that they're limited to just the desktop stuff. We've got some talented folks, and they're able to get in there and do some assistance with some network support at the in the building, at the building levels, and basically we have them doing whatever they're able to help us with, and it's a very small group and an awful lot of equipment to maintain. And I am looking for a 12-month position. We do a tremendous amount of work over the summer and often end up giving summer hours to our 10-month folks. And, the trend as I see it what my vision is for the department would be to try and move in the direction of 12-month positions in that area.
Thank you.
Art, it's Greg. Do you have information here about the volume increase, which is really substantial? Do you also have information about whether tickets are remaining open for longer? In other words, it's taking longer to close the tickets because of the volume?
I would say that that's probably a fair assumption. And as we've caught up, or as we catch up, we probably have a couple hundred open tickets at any given time, district-wide. So I can't speak to the actual age of the tickets off the top of my head, but you know, we definitely have a need, and we're definitely backlogged more than we have been in the past.
Thanks, Art.
Sure.
Any other questions for Art? Okay, great. Thanks, Art. Jeez. Okay, so the next slide, easy slide, a great slide actually, that our health insurance. We're looking at a decrease for this upcoming fiscal year of about $200,000. As you all know, this item can definitely fluctuate. The last few years have been pretty good years for us. However, it's based on trends, it's based on claims, because as you know, we're self-insured, and that's what we base our budget on, our historical claims and then built-in trends. So this upcoming year definitely is good. It says a lot about our workforce. Not sure if any of you were around in 16-17, but we had a huge upswing in our health insurance budget. So this is definitely a gift, and we're pretty excited that it came out this way for our upcoming year. Any questions on the health insurance? Great. Okay, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Gail so she could talk about some items related to the curriculum and instruction portion of the budget.
So maybe not as significant as the health insurance savings, but this is the second year in a row that you've seen a decrease in the staff development line, responding to foreseeable needs, making sure that we have staff development covered where we think we need it, but also not exceeding a budget line just to make sure that we're overly covered. So this is the second year in a row that staff development has decreased. In this 0.9 increase, you will see a proposal for the Madison Intervention Academy. And that's, I'll go into more detail on the next slide on that, but really anticipating to minimize whatever impact we are seeing for our K-5 students after a year and plus of disruption to our teaching and learning model. The other assumption that I'll go into more detail in is an SAT Academy, and really taking a look at how we might provide some supports for our juniors who are taking the SATs as part of a state assessment. So if you wouldn't mind going on to the next slide, Stacy, I'll go on a little bit into the Intervention Academy. So this is for our K-5 students. I think that the slide that we shared regarding intervention at Daniel Hunt High School, we talked about the Learning Lab, and the Learning Lab is considered a Tier 1 support. Can you go back, Stace? I think you just flipped forward, sorry. The Learning Lab is considered a Tier 1 support, Tier 1 being, oh, it just flipped again. Tier 1 being for all students. Where we get into our intervention model is when we're looking at what we consider Tier 2 or Tier 3 intervention, really looking at students who are struggling with the supports available for all students, and even with giving them extra supports from their classroom teacher, they really need more specialized instruction in order to maintain their learning. So right now we, according to the state model, we look to identify about 15% of our student population for Tier 2 or Tier 3 supports. This proposal would not provide transportation for our students, but it would offer those students a chance to re-engage in learning before the start of the school year for about 30 hours a week for 2 weeks prior to the start of the year. It would not be individualized or specific goal setting for kids during those 2-week models, except for probably a select few. It would be a smaller class size model. We're also examining a collaborative partnership with a Yukon reading internship program. I will certainly keep you appraised of any developments in that, but it's a beginning discussion. The idea would be that we would give kids every advantage to start the school year with their peers, feeling confident and secure in their skills. Last year, we provided all students K through 12 with an enhanced summer program where we were doing a lot of work with Google Classrooms, and we were doing math challenges and ELA challenges. And even though we kept our Google Classrooms open for kids to engage, we did not see a high degree of participation in that. So this is, again, kind of taking a look at what we're coming out of and prepare to go into the fall with our students feeling successful. This academy is a proposal, and it's based on securing our qualified staffing for August in 2021. We know that times might conflict with summer plans for both teachers and students outside of the school year. So we're excited about the proposal. We think it's definitely reasonable in terms of costs, and hopefully we'll have a high degree of impact in helping all kids that need our support. Next slide. The next slide is proposed SAT sessions, and I think the board's aware that the state assessment for grade 11 students has changed to the SAT. Last year, we were not given the opportunity to offer our students the SAT in March, the way it's scheduled for this year. This would provide a chance for our juniors to optionally attend either a Saturday or an after-school series from January to March. It would provide them with the materials and the practice. We would be seeking again to staff this with our own staff members, but those staff members would need to attend training by Kaplan, and they would also need to give pre and post assessments to those students. So this proposal is also included for your consideration.
Any questions for Gail?
I did have a question. On the summer school program that you mentioned, Gail, you said that it was a small class size. I don't have the screen in front of me, but what were you anticipating, that staff-student ratio?
You know, I think it depends, Violet, on the amount of support I might be able to arrange from the Yukon reading interns and from that collaborative. I'm hoping that helps to give us a better ratio, but I'm anticipating about a 1 to 12 to 15 class size or small group size, so about half a class.
And how is this different from our summer school special ed model?
The students who are in the summer school for special education needs are based on IEPs, so they're individualized programs. So those are very different in terms of how prescriptive they are. And it's to prevent learning loss for those students who qualify for special ed services. So that is through a planning and placement team process only. This proposal is really kind of a boost to re-engage our students, to get to know them, to also offer them a bit of confidence in the core academic areas in K through 5, so we can also hit the ground running when they start on the first day of school. So it gives us a chance to see how they're coming in and what they might need in addition to our regular Tier 1 instruction. So again, they've been identified already as they leave the school year for Tier 2 or Tier 3 support. So these are students that we have already identified and have been working with when we leave at the end of the year.
So what kind of data would you be collecting to measure success?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
So what kind of data are you collecting to measure success in this?
Yeah, so our students who qualify for Tier 2 or Tier 3 supports already have goals that they've identified, that have been identified for them through a student study team process. We wouldn't be able to collect as much individualized work, but we would be grouping them according to similar goals. So we would be able to take a look at where they came in the beginning of the 2 weeks and where they're leaving after the 2 weeks. I can't say that it would be the same as the academic supports that they experience during the school year because the ratio is vastly different, but we should be able to see some sort of effect size by having that 30 hours a week for 2 weeks if they're able to come and if they're able to attend everything that we offer. And of course, it's optional for our families.
Thank you.
Yep.
Gail,
Yeah.
it's Greg.
Yeah. Hi, Greg.
Was somebody else trying to jump in or was it just echo?
I was, but I'll wait till you go. Go ahead, Greg.
Okay. Sorry, Kathy. The intervention for 60 hours that's planned, what program would be used?
I think it depends on what the academics needs are that we're pulling. So currently, right now, we are using a lot of foundations materials for our K through 2 students. That certainly would be something that we would look to implement as well, depending on what the identified need is. But we're also seeing some issues with fluency for our older kids. So we're tracking that, of course, and seeing how much impact we can make this school year and see where we leave off at the end of the school year. So I think it would be a variety of materials and techniques, but I think we'd also be taking a look at how the kids are coming in and what their identified need is. Right now, we're talking about ELA, but certainly mathematics as well would have students who qualify for tier 2 or tier 3 intervention. We've been using the Bridges program to help with those students. We would probably still continue to use their intervention materials, but we would probably supplement that as needed too. In our SRBI piece, I think there's a variety of materials and approaches that you can see that we use with our students who are identified.
Okay, so just to make sure, so it would be the SRBI that is used during the regular year, but for those 60 hours in a variety of ways. Is that right?
Yes and no. So it would be the same kind of information that we leave off with, but because we're teaching kids in larger group sizes, the intervention would not be exactly the same. So tier 3 intervention, we're really grouping kids 1 to 3 in a group with 1 teacher. That is not this model. This is a larger class size. So that impacts the materials and the strategies and the amount of time that we're able to spend with kids. So we're not fully staffing to that degree. It's really meant to be a launch as well as a familiarity for us and a chance for us to see how they're coming in and what we can do to give them a boost during that brief amount of time. So there's a big difference between the in-school model and the summer proposal here, just because of class size and trying to reach 15%.
That's helpful. Thanks, Gail.
Yeah.
You say it's 15% of the K to 5 student population. How many students is that?
I don't have that data right in front of me, but I certainly have it in a backup document. I can get that to you, Diane.
And how many are you anticipating participating in the program?
Again, I don't have that data in front of me at this point, but I believe it was overall a smaller number from 4-5 than it was K through 3. I staggered that grouping. So I really looked at more students K through 3, less students 4 and 5. I can email that to you if you'd like.
Thank you.
Sure.
I would imagine, Gail, as the year goes on, that that number will definitely change as well. So, right, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think it will. I think the other, we're trying really hard to keep our practices and our assessments moving forward, despite the fact that we have some kids who are total distance learners. But that is a really difficult assessment moment that we're having. When we welcome the distance learners back into our classrooms, you know, we could have a very successful spring and maybe 100% of the kids elect to be back in person, and that would give us more accurate information. But right now we have a smaller cohort, definitely learning from home. Again, we are conducting as many assessments as we can. and trying to give them in a way that gives us accurate information. But yeah, the year is ever changing. This is an opportunity, I think, to get our hands on our youngest learners and set them up for success after a very tumultuous year.
I'm also interested in the UConn Reading Intern Collaborative. You know, I'm sure you'll have more information about that in the future, but I'm interested in hearing what that model might look like.
I am as well. I will certainly keep curriculum informed of how that's progressing. It's in its infancy right now, but we are trying to do some outreach so we can get some more hands involved in that program if we have the chance to run it.
Nice. Thank you.
Gail, are you concerned about staffing at all?
I did put that notation on both of these proposals because, you know, at the end of last year, it was really difficult to get staff to come in to work on various projects. They were obviously very tired. They really needed a break themselves. I've seen the same kind of piece as we're entering into some of these smaller breaks. This past week is the first break that I've had where I'm not working with groups of people because they just truly needed the break. So, you know, yes, it does concern me a bit, but I think it depends. You know, if we're in more normal conditions with the vaccination, then, you know, I might have a lot of interested people. And I do think that our teachers are always trying to help our students to be successful. So I'm sure we'll have some takers.
My other question was about any gaps that you might see in the 6 through 8 grades and whether or not there'll be any opportunities for some remedial or catch-up work for them.
Yes, I think I addressed this in a curriculum meeting or a finance meeting, I'm not sure which. But my proposal is to use some of the dollars that I'm hoping to have remaining at the end of this year to provide some supports for students who might be flagging in our middle school and in our high school to give them some access to staffing before July 1 so they can actually end whatever credit requirements they have on July 1 and have a break during the summer. Last year, we really extended the chance for students to finish classes well into August. And our students, the longer the time went, the more they struggled. So that's the plan for the older kids. Thinking that we had a far greater chance of capturing our K through 5 kids in August to come in for an academy than we would having our middle and high school kids coming in.
Understood. Thank you. I think this is really thoughtful. I think it's great to be thinking ahead like this. Anything that gets us towards normal is encouraging. So this seems like it puts us on the right path. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else for Gail? Okay, I think then we could turn it over back to Art to talk about the slight increase in the technology portion of the budget.
Well, I'm back, so we'll just follow the order of the slides here. I'm asking for an additional $35,000 for a combination of a few things to support the remote and what will eventually be hybrid meetings, and then hopefully we'll put this whole thing behind us. But I think Zoom is going to be around for the long haul for a number of reasons, obviously. But the Zoom software support, the Board of Ed's contribution, I have calculated at about $5,000 for the year. Google G Suite, which is what we use, that includes Google Classroom. Basically, at the end of last year, all of the free enhancements that Google was allowing school districts to use reverted back to being paid applications, and we had to purchase the enterprise license versions for the G Suite product. So again, having budgeted way in advance, as Dr. Cook had said earlier, this would be an increase for this year's budget, and I've asked for approximately $15,000 to cover the difference for the enterprise version. And then for Chromebooks, repairs and maintenance is what that stands for. I'm anticipating another $15,000 in parts for the addition of all the extra devices that we've got and the heavier use and more of them traveling back and forth to home and that sort of thing. So it's not all in the operating system software, but it was 5,000 for the Zoom, 15 for the G Suite Enterprise version out of my operating system district application line item. And then the Chromebook repairs and maintenance is in my repairs and maintenance for 15,000. The next item on here is interactive boards in core classrooms. I think there's a general theme, and I don't want to speak for all the building admins, but I think the general theme is that we do need to improve our infrastructure as far as projection equipment in the classroom is concerned. And I think that we're really looking to be able to enhance the experience for everyone, whether they're physically present in the room or whether they're in distance learning. And we have not purchased, the district hasn't purchased smart boards in quite some time. We currently have 90 of them, and they are, quite old and in many cases are not, they're certainly not a current version. And what we would like to do is reevaluate which brand of equipment we would like to use. But in looking at how many we could afford, I estimated $4,000 per room on average. And that was intended to include a 65-inch flat panel interactive display, which is basically like a flat panel TV on the wall that you can touch, having a touch screen on it. And Smart makes one, ViewSonic, there's Promethean, there's a whole host of a range of different brands that you can get. But we've looked to add an additional webcam that would be an add-on to the board and compatible with the board, and perhaps some enhanced sound and all of the cabling that would be required to build that into the room, basically. And I think that the goal would be to do as many as we could at one time, and to be able to try and address all the core classrooms, K through 12, at the same time. You'd be looking at over $500,000 most likely to do that. 520 is what I had estimated. We have 130 core classrooms across the district, K-12, and at $4,000 a room, that's $520,000. So we estimated a 5-year capital lease, basically a finance plan that would at 4%, 5 years, and it would bring it down to just under $117,000 a year. So that's what our thinking, or my thinking, was on the 130 core classrooms and being able to get them done. And it's a tall order to get that many all at once, but I think if we had a well thought out plan, we'd be able to get that done and then address the remaining related arts and other spaces. We have 224 classrooms in total, so there's about 94 other spaces that would also be, something that we'd like to look at in the future, but we wanted to start with the core classrooms. And then I was asking for an additional $75,000 to enhance the security camera coverage in the pre-K through 5, or K through 5, pre-K through 5, and to enhance the door locking system that we have with some key card access. And again, it would be, hopefully this would not be a one-time thing. It would get added into our base, and we'd be able to put this in until we were able to outfit all of the buildings with sufficient key card access. So that's basically what we're looking at. And I, again, happy to try and answer any of your questions.
Hi, Art. Thank you very much. This is a question concerning the interactive boards. Do we have is there a possibility for a grant on that?
There's actually a grant that we've applied for that applies to Polson and Brown. And we had applied, I believe that the max that we would be able to apply for was, I think, $80,000 per building. And if we were lucky enough to get that grant, it would be something that would move us closer to our ability to start addressing some of the related arts spaces as well in the other buildings. But you know, between Polson and Brown, there's 48 core classrooms, 16 at Brown and 32 at Polson. And you know, using the same calculations and estimates, we would really be able to get a little further if we could get that money also.
Okay, great, thank you.
This is maybe a Stacy question, Art, but I've been lurking at the finance committee meetings, and I'm still not entirely clear. So I know that there are two separate $75,000 amounts that are related to security. One is CIP and one is operating budget. And that seems odd. So is there a reason to start heading in that direction of sort of, I guess from my perspective, splitting the security request across? I mean, it's all the same pot of money, as we always say, but you know, we'd be operating in two ways unless I misunderstand.
I can answer that one. It's a great question. In terms of the 75, that's just happens to be the same. The CIP money is there for many years going out. This would be potentially something where when we get to where we feel we need to be, it could be repurposed within the budget or eliminated. But you know, we're feeling that there's a need to catch up, you know, for lack of a better term, in terms of where we feel we should be in terms of the security, specifically with cameras and key card access, especially with starting with the high school where you have students, you know, passing, you know, inside and outside of the building, where it'd be very helpful. And it's just a lot of keys that, you know, end up going out, and you lose control over keys versus key cards where you can just turn those off and restrict access in terms of time.
Additionally, also, we you know, the $75,000, I hate to put it in these words, but that won't go all that far with regards to security cameras and perimeter access. You know, in the past, when we did our large project, a lot of that was grant-based after the Sandy Hook tragedy, and that was a $480,000 project, I believe, that really put cameras in the high school Polson, and it also involves some telephones. So it's not a totally fair comparison, but you know, implementing a security camera where there is not a camera now can be a $3,000 or $4,000 per unit kind of a deal. And the perimeter access also can get quite expensive with all the labor that's required. So again, I don't know how much of a dent we can make on the 75,000, but it would be something that we'd want to chip away at and prioritize where we go.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I want to be very clear that I'm supportive of, you know, if the need is higher than 75,000 for security, we should address that for sure. I guess maybe let me frame this in a different way. Why not change the CIP request, or at least if that's not possible in the immediate year, think about changing the CIP request for the subsequent year to 150,000 rather than splitting it between the two. I'm just wondering about the rationale for that.
I think I can answer. Oh, go ahead, Stacy. You'll do a much better job.
No, I don't know if I will, Katie, but what I could, you know, Bill's on the line as well. And I know there is a security committee that is behind that $75,000 a year that's in CIP, that there are plans out there. I think this was unique when the admin team met all of the buildings address these needs. It was uniform amongst all of the buildings that this is what they wanted. So we thought this was a specific purpose for these cameras in the perimeter access outside or in addition to everything else that is in the plan for CIP. In the future, could we increase that going forward? Certainly. But this is what has been in the plan. And I don't know if Bill wants to expand anything on that, on what the security group has discussed.
Thank you, Stacy. I think you said it very clearly. The security, the 75,000 was specifically for the committee to come up with security issues throughout the district that weren't going to be publicized on what we could do to enhance security. We put that number in knowing that, we could spend 250, but if we put in a number every year and come up with a plan that we talked about in an executive session just for security with no limitations on what it would be for specifically. And then I think it's clear that Art came up with a need specifically for what he thought could enhance and was publicly talked about because it wasn't, sensitive. So they added that in. So, there's no doubt about it. We could always put more money in security. I don't think you could ever have enough. And so we historically thought the 75 every year would be a palatable number and it would be a goal for us to, commit to that. So that's the
And I think too, one of the things that helps me with CIP in terms of CIP, Greg, is it's a planning tool. So at 75 is somewhat of a placeholder, and sometimes we need to ask for more, and sometimes we end up giving some back to the town if it doesn't get used. And so having that money in CIP, but I totally understand your point and agree with, I'm never going to say no to security in our schools, but
yeah, it sounds like it's a timing issue in terms of planning, but I guess I'd just leave it here because I don't want to belabor it, but I would encourage folks who are thinking about the CIP planning, so finance and in this case, facilities probably together, to think about starting to move that into, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5 of the document so that it's all in one space. It's just, I think it's difficult to think about it as two separate things when these are really, largely the same bucket of ideas, maybe different departments, but it's all security based. So I just for clarity, I think that's helpful. And maybe 75,000 a year in terms of the CIP isn't really enough, and I know the answer to that is we could always find more to do, having sat on facilities for a long time. But if there is this need over time, I think it might be helpful to be transparent about that since we've always treated that way, or the opposite, to say, really all security is an operating budget topic. Let's pull it in there and it's going to be variable and less helpful as a planning tool. It's just, I'm really only asking about the split between the two. So that's
just so I understand. So say there's a year, like, God forbid, something happens. Are you saying, like, say we have that 5-year plan, right? That's in the CIP right now. So there's 5 years already out. What happens if there's a year when we need to do more? Should that be in the district budget or should that be added to CIP? Just so I'm understanding your thinking.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. It's a good question. And I think it's just something that warrants further discussion. If we anticipate that there will be some variability to it, maybe it belongs in the operating budget overall. It is an oddity in the CIP, right? It's the thing that's there every year into perpetuity. So yeah, maybe it's just a matter of looking at it differently. Again, the only reason that this is even coming up and I'm raising it now is because it seems like we have a bifurcation of these two numbers that happen to be the same thing, but are on the same topic. And maybe it's time to look at how to approach that, not necessarily for this year, but going forward.
I totally see your point.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, Greg, too, and I know Bill can probably speak to this way better than I can, but from my corporate experience of managing a capital budget versus an operating budget, there's different tax implications and other things for capital expenditures than there are for operating. And even though that's why we keep it, I think, in the capital budget as well, because these are physical depreciable assets. I don't know.
Yeah, that happy that it definitely is in the regulation for the CIP where there's a threshold of the dollar, the dollar threshold that would be included. But Bill did a great job. I think it was last year where we got the 75 implemented for the security. It may have been the year before, but we fought hard to get this back into the CIP. It was in here years ago. And I just think that through our budget discussions this year, this perimeter access and cameras came up and we said, okay, now we can identify these specifics. So let's try to add it to our operating budget for those purposes, leaving those buckets into CIP, for future of whatever that security committee comes up with. So it is unique in the CIP compared to other projects, but Bill did a great job getting it re-implemented. Thanks to the committee to agreeing to that. And maybe, going forward, we can bump it up even more, but it's definitely an improvement that we've made to the plan over the last couple of years.
Thank you.
I have a quick question about the leasing program. You said it's 117,000 per year for how many years?
5 years.
5. It was 5 years. I think we estimated 4%, Art.
Yeah, 5 years at 4%. I'm sorry, maybe my microphone didn't pick it up. I thought I was loud enough. Yeah, 5 years at 4%.
There will be a CIP meeting a week from this Thursday on the 14th, where the Board of Ed presents its capital non-recurring items. The CIP meetings in general are held weekly every Thursday. And then we, of course, at the Board of Ed are going to have our budget workshop next Tuesday at 6:30, where we can go into some more of these details.
That's a great point, Galen. Next week, the Board of Ed is on the agenda for the CIP, and we can certainly address and, make recommendations if we do, want to change anything that was already submitted to the committee. So we could address that with the committee next Thursday night.
Yeah. And then we'll have a finance committee meeting 2 weeks from now on the 19th before our regularly scheduled board meeting. So we've got some time to discuss these things. Not much time, but we do have some.
Crunch time. Any more questions for technology? No. Okay, and I think we're going to move on to Miss Liz or Dr. Battaglia to talk about the increase in our special education budget.
Thank you. So the increase this year, I really, as an admin team, as Dr. Cook said, we looked at, overall as a district, what we needed. So I really tried to do more of a rollover budget. However, there were two things that besides the additional, increased in cost of programs, the other two factors that impacted my budget. The first one is that for the special education excess cost, which we receive, so this is money that the state provides us for individuals who cost more than 4.5 times per pupil expenditure. This, in the last budget, we had it in for 25%. Now it is projected for next year that the district would be paying 29%. So just in that 4% of the excess cost for the high cost students, there was an increase. In addition, the increase this year, and I know I touched on this briefly last time we met, was due to the fact there was a class action lawsuit against the state of Connecticut, which the state of Connecticut lost. And what it said is that individuals with disabilities are entitled to special education services through the time they turn 22. So historically, whenever a student turns 21 during the school year, that June, they would exit services. So if a student turns 21 June 1st, they would exit at the end of that school year. With this new legislation, and the numbers there, we have 5 students that would have exited in June 2021, and now they are entitled services all the way through their 21st year till the day before they turn 22. Out of those 5 students, 2 of those students' birthdays are in May. And as you can see, at last time it was, well, they were already as expenditures. We have 4 students this year that are graduating from Daniel Hand that will now require 18 to 21-year-old services. So, you know, if this was a different year and the lawsuit did not occur, it most likely would have balanced itself out with 5 students exiting from the IEP and 4 students coming on. However, due to the class action lawsuit and the adjustments, we're not seeing that for this year. So that those are between the excess cost and then the additional time now students with disabilities can be educated through are the impacts to the increase into my budget.
Liz, on the first page that Stacy showed us, it said the change was 548,223. Is that different than this 468,701, or is there more money?
The first page, the summary, Happy, that shows it by general ed, special ed, is that the page you're talking about? That includes salaries. So this excludes any personnel or benefits.
Okay.
I know it's a little confusing. We report it both ways, so.
And it's a 0.8% increase, not an 80% increase, right?
Correct.
Yes. Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
So this next slide is pretty much a summary of the presentations that we had that makes up the 1.94. Everything is in your document. We have another slide or 2 that we'll go through, but this pretty much is just a recap of what makes up the different areas. And we can certainly dig deeper for next week's meeting if you have further questions. So that being said, I'm just gonna turn it back over to Dr. Cook, and he can go over some other thoughts that the district or the admin team have discussed.
Thank you, Stacy, and thank you everyone that presented, and great questions so far. We look forward to answering future ones as well. One of the activities we did with the team was really dig into what the needs were that we recognized we couldn't present to you in this budget. So before my time here, the team had certainly recognized that this is a difficult financial time for the town. You know, that there's not really an opportunity here to ask for things that you know, could be deferred, and so the needs put before you are really that they are needs of the district, you know, of an immediate nature. And you know, we're coming off of 2 low budget years, and also coming out of a pandemic. It's, you know, very difficult to predict, but you know, so I think we're really working hard to balance in terms of costs that we're seeing. Obviously our, you know, cost of goods purchase CPI is CIP is CPI, excuse me, is up, you know, over 2%. Our collective bargaining contracts are up over 2%, and you know, area school districts are, you know, seeing budget increases over 2%. We do recognize, you know, we have several things in our favor, including declining enrollment to help offset those costs. So we feel we've been able to present a responsible budget here. As I mentioned, you know, COVID needs, we are really taking a positive look on that, and you know, we'll continue to do so. In terms of the major needs deferred, we all thought that expanding the intervention academy, and some of the questions were around that. We'd love to see smaller class sizes. It's going to need a lot of pre-work to figure out where each student is and what support he or she will need during that time frame. Even offering additional time for families that might be away those 2 weeks. So we think we recognize that fully. The team really came around, some need for additional classroom furniture at Brown, understanding that other schools have been addressed more recently. Everybody felt that the interactive displays were needed. And, this is really a catch-up item. We've talked about that quite a bit, so I won't go into great detail, but it is something that would have been really helpful the last 2 years, but we feel we need to do that. And then all classrooms. So CTE, art, music, all are areas where, this would be very helpful. Additional cameras even beyond what we spoke of. And then also, there really is that need for that additional security position at hand. I know it's been discussed with the board in the past as well. So those were the needs that we did not put forward in this budget. Some are an expansion of needs that we did ask. So that kind of shows where we kind of had to cut things off there and put forward the budget we did. That's all we had. And as Stacy said, we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Can I just raise a document question? So I read through the book and I don't think I saw it. And I think we had something like this last year, but correct me if I'm wrong, but is it possible? So many of the slides in this deck included a dollar amount estimated for a program. Is it possible to just get a single sheet of that and maybe even embedded into categories of, where that lives as it compares to the slide just previous to this one? So in other words, what amounts correspond to what categories for each of the programs that are or personnel or whatever else that's being proposed that's in addition?
Happy did send out a document on that. Did you not get that, Greg?
I don't recall. I couldn't find anything. So maybe if we could just get it.
I do have, hang on, I'm going to try to share something else with you. Maybe this is what you're looking for. So hang on one
I
sec.
can resend it, Greg, but there were a couple other things in here. I know some of the numbers were a little bit different.
It shouldn't be.
The special ed one, I don't think I had like the special ed number in that one that I sent. It just was for it had the 2 new positions and the 2, what I sent had the 1.84 for staff increases. It didn't have any of the reduction in it. And then it had the 2 new positions and then the 2 new programs. That's all the pricing that I sent.
I'm going to try to share something else.
That's the November 10th document that you sent out, copy.
Can you guys see this? I'm sorry, I'm on a different screen right now.
Looks good.
You can see it, okay. So this up top comes to the 194 and then down here, it breaks it out and this is a chart. And this is something that we've shared year over year. We usually hand it out at the budget workshop, so I can certainly email this to you. Is this something that you were looking for, Greg?
This page, I can't see all of it, but that page doesn't have some of the dollar amounts from the slides though, right?
This should have all the summaries right in here. I'm sorry, it's very small.
But for example, I'll just pick one at random. So like the technology staff person, is that an individual dollar amount item on this page that we would be able to see?
That is included in the 662, which is broken out on your slides. So on the slide, we had the 662 broken out that showed the 1.13% increase. Included in that was a contractual, the RIFs, and the new positions, and that's all on the slide. So you'll see a slide in there that had the 1.13 that breaks out the dollar amounts that come up to the 662.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess what would be helpful is either added to those breakouts, this is the amount for this position, or just a summary of what was on the slides. If that's easier of, here were the things presented that had dollar amounts next to them. So we don't have to go through all the slides every time we're looking for an individual number, basically.
Okay. I could try to come up with something. No problem.
Stacy, I think the December 15th document might work. I believe that's what was referred to that Happy may have sent out, but we'll make sure or we could even create a new document. So but we'll make sure you have that.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional comments or questions on the budget? All right. So we'll move right ahead to board committee liaison report. And I'll start out with curriculum. We did not meet. That's easy. Our next curriculum meeting is next Tuesday, I believe at 5:30 or 6:30. I'm not quite sure. I think it's 5:30. But it is next Tuesday, the 14th. All right, Emily at communications.
No report. We haven't met since our last meeting.
Okay, and Tom, facilities.
Thanks, Galen. Facilities Committee met this evening. We went through 4 different topics. Going very quickly, Bill gave us an update and a finalization of the HVAC work that's been happening over the course of the past calendar year, and went through school by school. To note is that this upcoming summer, there is going to be some work on some external units. It'll take about 2 to 3 weeks during the summer. The cost will be about $20,000 to $30,000, but otherwise a successful conclusion to the review and remediation work that was done on the HVAC review. So thanks to Bill and thanks to Colliers for their work. Bill also reported on tree work that's going to be doing. There was reports of increased power outages that were occurring and causing disruptions at Brown and Ryerson. Bill's working with CLP. They have a date of January 11th to come and to do tree removal on a right of way that exists from 79 right up to Brown. Bill does not anticipate any disruption when they're removing the trees. If there is, the tree removal will happen on the weekends. Bill reviewed again the solar carport project, showed us some diagrams. This has already been entertained and approved by the Board of Ed. The contract is right now up for review and approval by the Board of Selectmen. Project is going to be occurring over late spring, early summer, and there's no anticipated disruption to any of the graduation ceremony needs that might be occurring in the parking lots. Bill and Dr. Cook, as he mentioned, we're really pleased to report a potential grant opportunity to install 3 touchless water fountains. They would be going in Jeffrey, Hand, and Brown if the grant is approved. The January 8th is the date for putting that grant in. And Bill identified a potential benefactor that would assist with some of the costs associated with labor for installing that. If that happens, Madison will have a total of 18 touchless water fountains in the schools. So that's a really good thing. Bill ended the report with a CIP update. We talked a little bit about this. He did mention the work that's going to be ongoing, both with the annual security infrastructure work that we just talked about, as well as work to the entries and walkways at Brown and Polson. This is work that's slated for 21-22. Bill also noted that he's been asked to look into potential needs regarding shelters, a shelter placement at one of the schools. This is something that the First Selectwoman has asked him to look into. That's going to be coming up this week at the town level. And CIP, as Galen mentioned, is also meeting on January 14th. Facilities Committee is going to be meeting again on February 5, and there'll be a motion, among other things, to go into executive session to revisit property acquisition for the schools. End of report.
Great. Thank you very much, Tom. That was great. All right, moving to finance.
Finance. Yep, the Finance Committee has not met. We just had our first budget workshop. End of report.
There we go. And Violet with personnel, do you have anything for us?
We have not met, nothing to report.
All right, we're good. And Greg with policy?
We have not met, no report.
All right, see, we're evening this out. We had a long discussion, now we're moving right along. All right. Diane, with your
No
swan
report.
song. Okay, excellent. All right, thanks. And I know that Scott Murphy, our Board of Selectmen liaison, is not here and does not have a report. At this point, are there any remaining members of the audience whose eyes are not glazed over that would like to make a comment or have a question? All right. Hearing nothing, we'll move along to the consent agenda. 8.1, there are no line item transfers to consider at this time. For 8.2, budget expenditures as of January 5th, 2021. And Stacy and Dr. Cook, if I could beg your clarification on this. This is regarding this list of expenditures to date that was distributed to board members. Is this correct?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I want to make sure I had the right item. So I need a motion to accept these budget expenditures as of January 5th, 2021.
So moved.
I'm sorry, who's that? Great, thank you, Katie. All right. Second, anybody?
Second, Diane.
All right, thank you. Discussion. Do we have a discussion on this? All right. All in favor of accepting the budget expenditures as of January 5th, 2021?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. We've accepted that. We have we struck action item number 9. We've tabled the discussion of the or the voting for the school year calendar. Action item 10 is a motion to approve the minutes of the December 18th, or excuse me, December 15th, 2020 Board of Ed meeting. Do I have a
So
motion?
moved, Diane.
All right, thank you.
Second, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Abstentions? Motion carries. Next is an action item to as the designation of standing committee membership. And for these, I'll go ahead and list the proposed committee slates, and then we will create a motion and vote on them as a whole. All right, for Curriculum and Student Development Committee, the proposed slate is Diane Weiss, Infantine Weiss for chair, Kathy Miller and Greg DeSantis. For Communications, Tom Pellegrino chair, Diane and Greg as members. For Facilities Committee, Emily Rosenthal chair, Happy Marino and Katie Stein as members. For the Finance Committee, Katie Stein chair, Happy Marino and Tom Pellegrino. For Personnel, Violet chair, Kathy Miller and Diane as members. Lastly, 11.6 for the Policy Committee, we have Happy as chair, Emily and Violet as members. So I need a motion to accept these committee personnel designations.
So moved, Greg.
All right, thank you, Greg. Second?
Second, Katie.
All right, thank you, Katie. Any discussion?
I have a question. Learn liaison wasn't on there. Is that not a?
Oh, that is, yeah, good question. That was not listed here. We will have to pick that up on a rotating basis or wait.
Caitlin, I'm happy to do it.
All right.
Easy peasy.
All right. So thank you, Katie. So Greg, do we need to introduce a motion to add Learn Liaison or just include it in the package?
I think because the liaisons are at will, we don't need to specify.
All right. Good. Well, thank you for that. It's a great catch, and thank you, Katie, for volunteering for that. All right. So So we have a motion. Any further discussion on this? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No abstentions. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Do we have any old business that we'd like to discuss? All right. Future agenda items to be brought up?
Chairman Cowley, if maybe this is a okay time for me to ask this. I should have said it earlier. If the board has questions that they know before next meeting, if they could send it to us, of course, we'll do our best to always answer questions on the fly. But if they know it, we can prepare and make sure we have detailed answers for the board.
Thank you. That's a great idea.
Thank you.
Okay. We've included meetings and dates of importance in your packet. It's going to be a very busy month, very productive month, and I'm really looking forward to everybody who's doing great work in the committees. It's a lot of time, and you have a chance to make the difference. And thank you very, very much. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. All right. And a second. All right. Thank you. All right. Any discussion? No. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Happy New Year.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Great. Good way to ring in the new year. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.